Meanwhile, a new book by a former speechwriter for then-President George W. Bush alleges the ex-president made some mean-spirited and even insulting remarks about politicians, including Barack Obama, Sarah Palin, Hillary Clinton, and more. CNN's Brian Todd has been looking into this book. Brian, what do we know about the book and the author?
Wolf, we know it's getting a lot of brushback from former top Bush aides who we've corresponded with today. They tell us the president described in this book is not the same man they know.
To give them a briefing about
new portrayals of a president taking his plain-spoken vernacular to very personal levels. Matt Latimer, speechwriter for George W. Bush for the last 2 years of his presidency, writes in a new book that Mr. Bush made disparaging comments about several major political figures at the time. Excerpts from the book Speechless are posted on GQ's website. Latimer writes that after then-candidate Barack Obama gave a blistering speech against his administration, President Bush fumed, "This is a dangerous world, and this cat isn't remotely qualified to handle it. This guy has no clue, I promise you." Another quote, "If BS was currency, Joe Biden would be a billionaire." We tried several times for response from the president's and vice president's press offices and got none. No one at President Bush's office responded to our repeated calls and email. Ed Gillespie, former counselor to President Bush, who was one of Matt Latimer's bosses, tells us Latimer's recollections don't ring true to him.
It's possible he was in meetings with the president that I wasn't in, but it's unlikely, and I just don't recall that. The fact is, President Bush has been nothing but gracious toward President Obama and Vice President Biden.
Latimer says President Bush wasn't too impressed with the Republican ticket either. After Sarah Palin was tapped as John McCain's running mate, Latimer writes Bush said, "I'm trying to remember if I've ever met her before. I'm sure I must have." His eyes twinkled. Then he asked, "What is she, the governor of Guam?"
The notion that he didn't know who Sarah Palin was, I can tell you flat out, is just not the case.
That sentiment echoed by former Bush aide Jason Recker, who was loaned out to the Palin campaign. Recker said Latimer was not a significant figure at the White House. Quote, "You'd be hard-pressed to pick him out of a lineup." We tried to get a response to that from Matt Latimer's representative. She didn't respond directly to Recker's comments, just pointed us to some general praise of the book by various pundits. We were told Mr. Latimer would not do any interviews until his book is released next week. Wolf?
Yeah, I think he's going to be here in the Situation Room next week to talk about it. I understand, Brian, he also said something rather nasty about Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, then Senator Clinton.
That's right. Latimer writes that former President Bush always believed that Mrs. Clinton would be the Democratic nominee, but he quotes the president as saying, quote, "Wait till her fat keister is sitting at this desk," except Latimer writes she didn't say the word keister. A top aide to Mrs. Clinton at the State Department would not comment on that. A source close to President Bush told us that does not sound like something Mr. Bush would say.
Brian Todd, thanks very much. Let's continue to assess with our CNN political contributors, Democratic strategist Paul Begala and Republican strategist Alex Castellanos. Not the first time a former White House aide has written a book saying some stuff that perhaps shouldn't have been said on the outside, what was said in private on the inside. What do you make of this?
Well, I hope President Obama is spared this. I hope no one is taking notes on this now, because you need that sanctity of that office to make some important decisions and even to doubt yourself at times, and now and then to let off a little steam, a sense of humor. Look, people do this for a couple of reasons. Right now, the Bush administration is not the most popular thing. To sell a book, what do? You slam it. To get on the news, what do? You slam it. So this is all about kind of regaining some popular currency with some things that no one else can validate that are true. But, whether you're a priest or a lawyer or a doctor, those are professions which you ought to give your clients your confidence. A speechwriter, too.
When you worked in the Clinton White House, were you always nervous that your colleagues were taking notes and that they were going to leave the administration and then write a book? And so you, as a result, had a couch, had to be very careful what you were saying, even in the privacy of the Oval Office?
Yes. And, of course, some of them avoided the rush, and instead of waiting to publish a book, they'd run out to the lawn and leak it to you, Wolf. So I learned that if I had really, candid advice, I would have to give it in confidence, alone with the president, or maybe with just a very few people who I could really trust. And that's a shame. And I think Alex is absolutely right. Frankly, it sounds exactly like George W. Bush, let's tell the truth, okay? But it's wrong for this guy, whoever he is, who would not be a blip on the radar screen professionally if it wasn't for George W. Bush, to betray that confidence. I've worked there. Alex is exactly right. Presidents have to have a right to say silly or funny or even mean things, or to be wrong, or to challenge themselves. This is deeply wrong. It's a serious problem for future presidents.
There's a